You know that keyboard you're using right now? Well, it has this incredible hidden story. It's a story full of mechanical glitches, fierce economic debates, and even a secret history tied to Morse code. This is the battle for your keyboard.
I mean, it's the first question everyone asks, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That just makes sense. So how in the world did we all get stuck with this QWERTY layout? It looks totally random, but believe me, the answer is anything but.
And look, this isn't just some trivial pursuit question. Experts see the QWERTY layout as a genuine historical puzzle. It actually reveals so much about how technology evolves, how markets really work, and how we get locked into systems, even if they aren't exactly perfect.
So the first and most famous explanation you'll hear is that we're all just using a historical mistake. The story goes that the QWERTY keyboard was this clumsy, inefficient design that we basically just got stuck with.
You know, the funny thing is, our first instinct is totally right. The inventor, a guy named Christopher Sholes, he actually started with a simple two-row alphabetical layout. It was logical, it was easy to learn, but it had one fatal flaw.
Okay, so you have to picture these early typewriters. They were basically a basket of metal arms that would swing up and smack the page. Now, on an alphabetical layout, the little arms for letters we type together all the time, like S and T, were right next to each other. So if you were a fast typist, those arms would literally crash into each other, creating this tangled, inky mess.
So the fix seemed pretty simple, right? If the common letter pairs are causing jams, we'll just move those letters apart. This clever little engineering hack is what gave us the QWERTY layout. See, it wasn't designed to be ergonomic or fast for you. It was designed purely to stop the machine from breaking down.
And this brings us to this really cool concept that economists call path dependency. Think about it. The QWERTY layout was a solution for a 19th century mechanical problem. But by the time millions of people had learned to type on it and thousands of machines were built, it was just too late. The standard was locked in. We were stuck on that path, even long after the original problem of jamming typewriters completely disappeared. But what if that whole story is just plain wrong? Let's switch gears and look at a really powerful counterargument. A couple of economists examined this history, and they called it the fable of the keys, arguing that this whole idea of QWERTY being a market failure is a total myth. Yeah, these two economists, Leibowitz and Margolis, basically said, hold on a second. They argued that markets are usually pretty good at getting rid of genuinely bad products. If QWERTY was really that terrible and a much better alternative existed, they say there's no way we'd still be using it today. So they decided to put it to the test.
See, the whole QWERTY is a mistake story needs a hero, right? It needs a vastly superior keyboard that was unfairly ignored. And that keyboard was the Dvorak layout, which was patented back in the 1930s. But the real question is, was it actually as amazing as the legend claims?
And this is where the evidence gets really fascinating. The main proof for Dvorak's superiority comes from this 1944 Navy study that found these huge speed gains. But here's the catch. The study was run by its inventor, August Dvorak. That's a massive conflict of interest. So later, when the US government ran a more objective, controlled test in 1956, they found no real benefit and basically said, you know what? It's not worth the massive cost of retraining everybody.
Now, when you actually look at the hard data, the story gets even more complex. On paper, yeah, layouts like Dvorak and the more modern Colmac are clear winners. Your fingers stay on the home row way more, and they travel less than half the distance. But, and this is a really big but, study after study finds that for an expert typist, the actual real-world speed increase is only about 5%. I mean, that's a nice improvement for sure, but it's hardly the world-changing advantage that the fable would have you believe.
So, if QWERTY isn't some tragic accident, but it's also not perfectly optimal, what is the real story here? Well, it turns out there's a third theory that might just solve the whole puzzle.
So get this, researchers at Kyoto University found a fascinating new clue. They realized that the very first power users of the typewriter were telegraph operators. These were folks who had to transcribe Morse code as fast as humanly possible as it came buzzing over the wire. And it seems the QWERTY layout was practically custom-built for them. See, American Morse code was tricky. A Z could easily be mistaken for the letters S followed by an E. So what do you do if you're a telegraph operator? You put the S, E, and Z keys right near each other so you can rapidly type the correct character once you figure out the context. This actually explains some of QWERTY's weirdest key placements that the simple anti-jamming theory just can't.
So it turns out QWERTY wasn't an accident at all. It was actually a clever two-for-one solution. It solved the mechanical jamming problem while also being a highly specialized tool for its first and most important professional users.
So, after all that, what do we actually learn from this whole battle for the keyboard? Well, it's about way more than just where the letters are. It's about the hidden forces that shape all the technology in our daily lives.
So what's the takeaway? First, that the real story is almost always more complicated and way more interesting than the simple myths we tell. Second, that a good enough solution that shows up at just the right time often beats a perfect one that comes way too late. And finally, it's a great reminder that the invisible standards all around us are usually the result of forgotten problems and some really pragmatic compromises.
The story of your keyboard is a reminder that so much of our world is built on these historical foundations we never even see. It really makes you wonder, what other technologies, systems, or ideas that we use every single day are the result of some long-forgotten battle? What other QWERTYs are hiding in plain sight?